Welcome to the deep dive. We're plunging into the material you sent us today, all focused on these really intense legal proceedings that are unfolding right now.
That's right. And this material you shared, it really it pulls back the curtain on some very specific testimony, specific allegations coming out of this high-profile federal trial. Gives us a pretty detailed look at what's being put forward in court.
Absolutely. So our mission here in this deep dive is to kind of cut through the noise, pull out the most, striking nuggets from this material. We want to give you a clear picture of what's actually being said on the stand and what the key allegations really are.
Exactly. You sent this over wanting to get a better handle on the core claims, the witness accounts, all tied to this major ongoing case. So yeah, let's dive in and unpack what really stands out.
Okay, let's jump right in. Some of the most dramatic testimony laid out here starts with accounts related to Cassie and her family.
Yeah.
One particularly striking piece involves Cassie's mother taking the stand.
Right. And what the material really emphasizes about her testimony is this alleged demand from Sean Combs, Diddy, for $20,000.
$20,000.
Yeah. She talked about having to, take out a loan just to make this payment.
Wow. And the critical detail from her testimony was why she felt she had to pay.
Her account points directly to fearing for her daughter's safety. I mean, she testified that Diddy allegedly demanded the money because he was enraged, basically, that Cassie was dating someone else.
Okay.
And crucially, she also testified about a specific threat, Diddy allegedly threatening to release sex tapes of Cassie.
Oh, wow.
And that fear, as she described it, that's what pushed her to pay. She was desperate to stop that from happening.
The material adds a bit more detail on the timing here, too, doesn't it?
It does. It suggests Diddy allegedly reached out to Cassie's mom and her husband after that alleged email threatening the tapes had already been sent.
Okay, so the threat email came first.
Seems so, yeah. And then came the demand for the $20,000 because, according to her testimony, he was just furious with Cassie.
And the source of that alleged anger was?
Her testimony points to Cassie's relationship with the rapper Kid Cudi.
Right.
The material also notes she mentioned something about Diddy having recently spent $20,000 on Cassie for some reason, and he was demanding that specific amount back. It's a bit tangled.
So, okay, the demand was made, the payment happened because of these alleged threats. Then what happened with the actual money?
Well, interestingly, her testimony included the detail that Diddy eventually sent the $20,000 back to her.
He sent it back?
According to her account, yes. It was paid, he held on to it for a bit, and then returned it.
Huh. Okay, well, this brings us right to that Kid Cudi connection then, which, it features pretty prominently in the material you shared.
It really does. The material indicates that Kid Cudi, Scott Mescudi is his legal name, he's expected to testify.
In his expected testimony, it's focused on what exactly?
It seems to be rooted in his brief relationship with Cassie. This was quite a while ago, maybe 14 years, around 2011. And this was while she was apparently still involved with Diddy. So his testimony is expected to center on him allegedly being threatened because of that relationship.
And here's where the material gets, pretty intense.
No.
There's a really stunning allegation detailed.
Yeah, it highlights the claim that at one point, Kid Cudi's car was actually blown up.
Blown up?
Yeah.
Seriously. And how is this alleged event connected in the narrative presented in the material?
Well, the way the material describes it is, Diddy allegedly threatened he would do it, and then sometime later, Kid Cudi's car was blown up.
Okay.
But, and this is important, the material points out that while the threats were allegedly made and the event happened, there isn't documented proof presented in this material that Diddy actually did the bombing.
Right.
But the alleged threats and the event itself are definitely being linked together in the presentation.
So it sounds like the strategy outlined in the material is really about presenting the threat and the later event as potentially connected. It's sort of leaving it for consideration.
Precisely. It seems to be about laying out a pattern of alleged behavior and, potential consequences.
Okay, let's shift then to Cassie's own perspective, her allegations as detailed in the material.
Right. So Cassie herself testified that Diddy allegedly threatened her over her relationship with Kid Cudi as well.
And how did Diddy supposedly find out about them, according to her testimony?
Her testimony describes him finding emails between her and, Kid Cudi's staff on her phone.
Okay.
And this happened, she recounted, during something the material calls a freak-off.
A freak-off. Okay, based on the context here and other testimonies mentioned later, what does that term seem to mean?
Well, from how it's described, especially with later testimony about preparing hotel rooms and things, it appears to refer to these specific, often described as drug-fueled sexual encounters or parties that Diddy allegedly arranged.
Wow.
So it wasn't just finding emails, it was finding them in that specific environment.
Got it. And her testimony about Diddy's alleged reaction when he found those emails.
Cassie testified that he then allegedly lunged at her with a wine bottle opener.
A wine bottle opener.
Wow.
The material also mentions Cassie allegedly documenting injuries.
Yes, it notes she had photos of herself bruised up and apparently showed them to her mother, telling her what was going on. There's also mention in the material of like a fight around Christmas time, that same period, which also involved her mother somehow.
So the material is painting this picture of the relationship dynamics back then.
It asserts that Cassie was, allegedly involved with both Diddy and Kid Cudi at the same time.
And how does the material describe her broader experience in the relationship with Diddy? It wasn't just about Cudi, right?
No, not at all. It describes her as sort of allegedly being drawn into the whole lifestyle, the money, the glitz, the glamour, drug use, the sexual experiences,
Right.
but at the same time experiencing this really significant dark side, which included, allegedly, abuse, violence, and this feeling of being trapped, unable to date other people freely, feeling like she lost her own agency.
Okay, so to broaden the picture that the material presents, it also brings in testimony from other people, right?
Yes, definitely. Other accounts seem to support aspects of this overall narrative. For example, Diddy's former personal assistant testified about allegedly having to prepare hotel rooms specifically for these freak-offs.
And there was an exotic dancer mentioned too?
Correct. Testifying about allegedly being hired to participate in them.
What about the testimony from male sex workers as mentioned?
Their testimony, as it's laid out in the material, describes being paid, and they characterize Diddy and Cassie as allegedly engaging in, quote, nasty acts.
The material also notes a federal agent testified.
Yeah, providing details from the raid on Diddy's home back in March 2024. That testimony, according to the material, contributed findings relevant to the whole case.
So if you look at all these different testimonies and allegations together, how does the material frame the bigger picture being presented against Diddy in this trial?
Well, the material summarizes these broader allegations, including significant drug use. It uses terms like pills, exos, dope,
Okay.
and accounts in the material characterize him as like power trip, ego tripping, emotional, and generally considered an abuser by the people involved.
And how is all of this being woven into that federal IQ context? Because that seems key to the legal strategy mentioned.
Right. The material really explains the prosecution's apparent strategy here. It seems to be framing it as Diddy allegedly using his enterprise, his business structure, his influence, his connections,
Right.
using his money, his power structure to allegedly carry out various illegal acts and exert control over people. The goal seems to be, based on this material, connecting all these different alleged acts and individuals over time.
So not just isolated incidents.
Exactly, presenting them as part of a pattern orchestrated through this alleged enterprise. That's the RKO angle.
The material also touches briefly on how sex trafficking is being defined or applied here, which seems noteworthy.
Yeah. Yes, it notes that the definition being used seems to be presented as broader than maybe the conventional idea of like physically holding people hostage.
How so?
It's presented as including forms of pimping, pandering, and also allegedly paying individuals, like the male sex workers mentioned, for participating in certain activities. It's a broader application, it seems.
But it's crucial, and the material does stress this, that Diddy is pleading not guilty to these charges, right? Sex trafficking, racketeering, these are allegations being presented in court.
Absolutely. That's vital context. The trial is about proving or disproving these claims with evidence. He maintains his innocence.
Okay. Shifting gears just a tiny bit, the material you shared also included a pretty notable public reaction to some of this news.
Yes. It mentions the rapper 50 Cent. Noting that he's been publicly engaging with the situation, the material described it as poking fun or maybe taking enjoyment in it.
Right. And the material even quotes his specific reaction on social media, the Gram, to the news that Kid Cudi might testify.
Yeah, he apparently posted, quote, "Kid Cudi gonna testify like I'm on your A. Don't act like you didn't do it now. You did it, lol."
And it wasn't just the comment, was it?
No, the material notes he also posted mocking photos of Kid Cudi wearing a dress alongside that comment. So it's just a glimpse, really, into the very public and often pretty harsh reaction that's happening alongside the actual legal proceedings.
So as you process all this material you sent us, What does it really mean for your understanding, for the listener's understanding, of this really complex case?
Well, I think this deep dive into the material really highlights how the prosecution seems to be weaving together these alleged events from years ago. Past relationships, alleged threats like the one involving Cassie's mother, specific incidents like that car bombing allegation, and combining them with all these various testimonies about alleged behavior, drug use, control.
It shows the level of, specific detail witnesses are bringing to the stand. They're aiming to paint this big picture under the umbrella of our ICO and sex trafficking laws. It's really about connecting seemingly separate points into one larger narrative based on these allegations.
Yeah, the material you provided gives us a pretty clear window into the specific claims being made right now and the strategy being used to try and link alleged actions across different people and different times.
So we've taken a deep dive into the material you shared, exploring those striking testimonies from Cassie's mother, the expected testimony involving Kid Cudi, that dramatic car bombing allegation, other witness accounts detailing alleged behavior and environments, and the legal framing of it all. All is presented in the material you sent.
And the material makes it really clear this is very much an ongoing trial. It could last for weeks still, featuring a wide range of witnesses, and the focus seems to be on trying to integrate all these diverse alleged acts into one comprehensive narrative under the RICO and sex trafficking charges. It's a complex legal process unfolding right now.
Definitely. So, considering this really intricate web of alleged connections being presented, linking relationships and threats from, a decade ago or more to these current federal charges, what questions does this deep dive maybe raise for you, specifically about how different alleged actions, spread across years involving various people, are being connected and presented in a single federal case like this? What does it make you consider about the nature of building a case based on a pattern of alleged behavior over time, as outlined in the material we looked at?